Don bangs the mom from Twilight, Ken is the client now, and mustaches. Mustaches everywhere! Tonight we're looking at Mad Men 708 Severance on What's on the Box! Hi, I'm James.
And I'm James.
And this is What's on the Box, where we review and discuss the latest episode of your favorite TV show.
This week, Mad Men returned from its ridiculous half-season split. I don't think it's going to get some huge Breaking Bad Netflix numbers, but AMC took the gamble anyway, and we had to go a whole, 11 months without Don Draper?
It was too long.
But I learned to make a great old-fashioned. Where we last saw the gang from Sterling Cooper and Partners, Roger, feeling that he had been ousted from his birthright, decided to make a power play and sell the firm to McCann. So we pick up there where Don is, as he pitched to Ted, just focusing on creative, which means just focusing on models.
Just focusing on getting laid. And boy, when he puts his mind to something, he really succeeds.
He really is just good at things that aren't marriage or parenting or not being an alcoholic.
Or enacting permanent change within himself.
Becoming a self-actualized person.
Don's philandering has always been a part of the series, but I don't know if we've ever seen him in full-on whore mode like this.
Well, he's embraced it. He's embraced kind of who he is. The first scene where we first see him where he's selling furs.
Just like he used to when he was discovered.
That's the origin of Don Draper, and he's kind of come back to that. In a way, he is the, full Don Draper. He's always been fighting against being Dick Whitman, and at this moment, he seems to have accepted those parts of him, like we get at the diner.
At this point, he's talking about his childhood and his past as Dick Whitman in public with strangers.
In half-truths.
Yeah, it's still a big step.
He's telling a version of the story that he told in the Hershey's pitch with tears, with laughs.
He's turning what was once his sentimental, private past into just a funny story to get laid. So the waitress reminds him of Rachel Menken. Even though I think she looks more like Midge.
Don Draper has a type. She's brunette. She's a pretty brunette who seems a little vulnerable. That is his bread and butter. In this episode, it's Rachel that we're calling back to.
Maggie Siff doesn't look like she has changed at all in the 6 years since we've seen her.
No, she looks great.
She looks
amazing.
Exactly the same.
So does John Hamm, though.
That's true. The waitress moves Don to try to contact Rachel, or at least sparks that memory in him, so he sees her as a potential solution to the topaz problem. And then he finds out that Rachel is dead.
When Don was with Rachel in the first season, she seemed great for Don. He opened up to her. He acted in a way that we didn't see him act with Midge or Betty, and really anybody except maybe Anna Draper. And I wonder if, to have this storyline while Rachel is dead in this first episode of the final season, is Matt Weiner saying, don't hope for anything.
Don't expect a happy ending.
Don't expect a happy ending.
Yeah.
He's not going to run off into the sunset with Rachel Menken.
Because she's dead.
Sal's not coming back.
We're not going to visit Ginsburg in the hospital.
Kinsey isn't going to be the screenwriter of the first Star Trek movie.
That one could happen.
That movie did suck. This brush with Rachel's ghost and brush with death, gets him to realize that he's not getting anything out of this life that he's living.
It's like how Ken mentions a life not lived. Rachel's death and how she died young but lived a life that she wanted to, according to her sister, really makes Don realize that he doesn't have the life that he wants and he doesn't know what life he wants yet.
Well, I think there's also this shadow of the life that he could have had with Rachel. He made an effort back in season 1 to run away with her.
I want to go, and I want you to come with me.
I think it was one of the first mentions we had of LA being this kind of magical place where all the problems are going to be fixed, which Pete refutes in this episode. But, the famous "this is all there is" speech.
This is it. This is all there is.
He says that, and that's the song that bookends this episode.
Right. Is this all there is? For Don, it really seems like it is all there is. Is this same cycle of existence.
And maybe he had another chance at some point, but he missed his flight. The Don storyline was okay. I wasn't happy every time we wound up back in that diner, but I was very invested in an episode that finally featured one of my favorite characters, Ken Cosgrove.
Cosgrove.
Accounts.
I'm Ken. Cosgrove. Accounts.
yeah, we finally get a Ken episode, which I feel like is a long time coming.
Yeah, we've skirted around with it, including in Signal 30 when he had that beautiful voiceover to close out the episode. But I think this is the first time we see him at home, first with his in-laws, and then just alone with his wife, and without his eye patch.
Confirmed, Ken lost an eye.
That's so sad.
Yeah, he got shot in the face.
One of the most moral characters on the show. As far as we know, doesn't cheat on his wife.
This is what it gets him. He gets shot in the face and he gets fired.
We were really worried early on that Ken was going to snap, that he was either going to throw himself out a window or get Pete's gun out of his office or do something crazy. In the end, you can say he won, but he's not going to be working on his novel now that he's working for Dow.
Nobody gets out of Sterling Cooper alive, in a way.
He's said that he hasn't written in a long time. Do you think that has atrophied away entirely, and that's why he decides to go with Dow? Or do you think it's more of a pressure to compete with Pete? Because it's not till after he meets with Pete that he decides to go get that job at Dow.
I think it is. I think it's just spite and revenge. And I think it's a short-sighted decision made in the heat of the moment. Because he's a wealthy person. Like, there's no doubt about it that, like, Ken makes a good amount of money. And obviously his wife is from a very rich family as well. She says so. He could have everything that he wants. But it's, again, a life not lived.
It's also choosing the easy path. I think working at Dow is going to be easier for him than becoming a successful author.
Absolutely.
And that's, a lot of people always take the easy path. That's why Don married Megan instead of Faye.
And in a way, that's why he didn't end up with Rachel. Because Rachel was every bit Don's equal. And who is Don Draper if he can't be that alpha person?
If he can't throw money in a woman's face.
After all, that's what it's for.
And finally, in our C story, we had Joan and Peggy dealing with the guys from McCann Erickson.
It's very fitting that we're discussing the women last.
They have this meeting with McCann Erickson, and it goes
great. It's awesome.
They're very progressive.
Yep, they seem like really awesome guys.
In actuality, it's some of the most blatant sexism we've seen in this entire series.
Probably. It really is. A lot of this episode is going back to really early season 1, even going back to then where you have our dear friend Ken Cosgrove chasing secretaries around. That doesn't seem as mean-spirited as...
Exactly. This is definitely putting a woman in her place through sexual harassment.
Do you think that some of that is these guys from McCann being threatened by a partner and a copy chief?
Maybe on some subconscious level, but they're not aware of that.
That's true.
Their reptilian brains can't think of that. And then Peggy's response is not sympathetic.
You can't dress the way you do and expect...
How do I dress?
Right, they go to commercial after that scene and come back after letting the audience think, oh, Joan and Peggy are going to bond over this moment. But they don't. They're both insecure, they're both hurt, and they take it out on each other.
Which is sad, because some of the best moments of the series are when those two get along and have friendly moments.
Joan does something that she's done for years, and that's make fun of Peggy's appearance. And Peggy is someone who does not have a lot of confidence in herself that way.
And that's why she reacts so positively to Mathis's saying that she's a catch.
You're a catch.
Thank you.
It's only after her experience with Joan in the elevator that she agrees to go on the date with his brother-in-law, Stevie.
And it's interesting, though, that Peggy does the classic victim-blaming thing by blaming Joan for dressing the way she does, when this entire series, Joan has always commented on how Peggy dresses.
Peggy, this isn't China. There's no money in virginity.
So that's probably why it's on Peggy's mind. She's like, you've always told me to dress a certain way, well, look where it gets you.
They're both successful women, and they've both gotten there in very different ways. And I think that they look at each other and see what they don't have. It goes back to the bigger theme of this episode of a life not lived.
And is this all there is?
Exactly.
That's about it for the main stories of the episode, so let's talk about other stuff like mustaches.
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 Whose is more grotesque, Roger's or Ted's?
Roger's is more ridiculous, but I think it suits him better.
I think that there's a confidence to it. Roger can probably do whatever he wants, even if he does look like a extra in Smokey and the Bandit.
If you've ever seen old porn and you turn it on and you're like, I don't want to watch that guy have sex, it's probably Roger Sterling having sex. Ted's mustache somehow makes him look even sadder.
Yeah, it is a sad because it kind of droops. Yeah.
Ted, I might be getting a divorce, I don't know.
He may or may not be divorced. he makes that mention of the Vogue party and that he wants to pregame with Don at his apartment. That is not a Ted Shaw move.
No, that's more of a Harry Crane maneuver.
I think I saw that episode of Star Trek, the Harry Crane maneuver. It was written by Paul Kinsey.
There's no Jim Cutler to be found.
No Jim Cutler, which is, I would be sad if we never saw Jim Cutler again.
That would be sad. Cutler's a fun character. It does look like Lou Avery is gone, though.
Yeah, but that means no more Scouts Honor.
If they just bring him back one more time, I swear I'll never complain about his old man ways. Scouts Honor.
We've got 6 episodes left. What are your expectations down the stretch?
I try not to have any expectations for Mad Men just because so many of the big things that have happened in the show seem to come out of nowhere. In retrospect, there are hints dropped throughout the seasons, but things like the CGC merger or even firing themselves back in the end of season 3 really just happened within the episode. So I like to just sit back and let it happen.
There are, though, some of these big running threads that have been hanging over the show for some time. The biggest being death, and is somebody going to die? I think it's ridiculous to think that someone is going to be the literal falling man from the credits. That's stupid. There are a lot of bad omens hanging around.
I am hoping that Pete's gun will finally go off. He's had that thing since season 1. I want to see him fire it.
Especially because it's the same price as a chip and dip.
Well, that about ends our discussion of Severance here, but we want to continue it with you in the comments below.
Yes, we've only had a chance to watch this episode once sober, so it's really an informal discussion, and we're going to have a lot of thoughts on this episode in the next few days before the next one airs, so let's keep the conversation going. Next Sunday, we have another exciting premiere in this TV season. Game of Thrones comes back, and James and I are going to be right back here in front of the TV, giving you our thoughts on one of my absolute favorite shows.
Until then, I'm James.
And I'm James.
And this has been What's on the Box?
On the next episode of AMC's Mad Men.
Why don't you subscribe?
Megan, can you subscribe?
Oh, sure.
Subscribe to the channel. You're not subscribed? Hey, subscribe. Oh, I did. Well, that's a good channel. Everyone's subscribing to this channel. That was a good video.
I should have subscribed to that channel.